Hi everyone and welcome to FilmDirt. I'd like to talk about the Shawshank Redemption. It's one of those films where, don't you find everyone talking about movies always tells you to watch the Shawshank Redemption? It just seems to be the standard thing for people to say when talking about favourite movies and must-see movies. Oh, you haven't seen this? Oh, you must see it. And I always found it a little bit tiresome because I came into the film quite late. I think I saw it maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It's just one of those films where I thought I'll get round to seeing it one day, and that one day never comes, as we all know. But I sat down to watch it, and I have to say it's very good, but it's not my it's not my ultimately favourite film. When people say, "Oh, it's the best film of all time," and it's always in everyone's top 5 lists, it's great. It's a good movie, but it's not my favourite of all time. It's definitely in my top 10, 15, maybe films of all time that I've ever seen. What I got from it was a very, how shall I say this? A very classic way of storytelling where, don't you remember when you were small growing up, where a film would just be on and there'd be nothing particular happening, it's just characters, it's just looking at how these characters cope with things, and it's almost like a fly on the wall, day in the life type scenario. There's no huge set pieces as such. And this is how this film came across to me. It's just one of those films you can put on and it's very easy to get into. You find certain characters and story threads really quite touching. And of course it's a prison story overall. But then you know what comes with it. You've got the stories of each inmate, and none of them ever seem to be guilty, do they? Or maybe they are, but it was a mistake, and we see the positives in people and we start to feel for them. Now, of course, all my reviews are spoiler reviews, so I can't talk about a film without talking about certain parts of the story. I just find it difficult. I like to talk about films openly with people that have also seen it, so if you haven't seen it, please see it and then come back and see if you agree with me. So I'm going to talk about certain things story-wise. Andy Dufresne, he's played by Tim Robbins. Is he guilty? It kind of sets up the scenario that he could be, and there's a grey area. He says he didn't kill his wife and he didn't kill her lover, but in some ways it's almost like the man's broken and he's come to accept that he's being punished. And how does the human soul cope with all of this? And it's just really is a matter of survival. Now, the aspect of him being an accountant and being exceptionally clever, organising all these deals inside prison, I mean, that's fantastic in itself. And we have to remember, things like, it wouldn't happen nowadays because technology is just too good and everyone knows what everyone's been up to, and records, and things were a little bit more slapdash back then, and records weren't updated or easily obtainable. It was just all seemed to be just pen and paper, and we've almost forgot about those times, haven't we? How we can manipulate things and how easier it seemed to be back then. Obviously we know different now. We didn't know that at the time. And there's a certain magic with that you're watching an old style movie where people are just trying to survive. And like I said earlier, the stories of certain characters, like the older gentleman, his story is touching, and that's what carries the movie. That's just people and characters and how storytelling should be. Doesn't need to be big events. The only real big events I saw was obviously the great impact that Morgan Freeman had on the story. He's always very significant in every film he's done with his fantastic voice and narration at certain parts, and also the evil prison guard played superbly by Clancy Brown. He's played a lot of these types of characters before, notably in Starship Troopers, which I'm hoping to review at some point in the future. It's a fantastic movie, and the character of Clancy Brown seems to be very similar. And like I said, he just plays it so well. He's that guy that is in charge, and he's bending the rules, and overall, I'm not into prison movies as such. There's been a few over the years that yeah, they've been good, but not really, my go-to type of film. I think once you've seen this, you've seen them all really. You know what's going to happen. You're going to get behind the characters, and you're going to see their story, and did they do it or didn't they? And that's all great. I think there's a way of telling that story, and I saw parallels with this with another good story that I found very interesting was the Clint Eastwood movie Escape from Alcatraz. I think this seems to be very loosely based on that story, and if you've not looked up the true events of that story, I thoroughly recommend it. It's so interesting where the guys actually escaped or seemed to escape, and it's one of the unanswered questions, and it's that wonder that did they escape, didn't they escape, and it's the fact that we can't answer those questions. That is interesting, and I got that in the Shawshank Redemption, because as we know at the end he did escape, and then you have to remember you're in that time where again records and technology wasn't at the standard it is now, so it's easy to disappear back into the community, and so you got that part of it where we can now look ahead to how this man will adjust to seemingly a normal life again after spending so long in prison. Can that be possible? Now, I've never been to prison. I can't relate to that. Anyone that has spent time in prison will probably be able to answer the question. Depending on how long you've been inside, that's a character development part of the story where you're either happy or you're sad for that person, or angry. Now, I found this movie and the later part of the story where he does escape very magical. We're on this story where he is being mistreated, and the staff base of the prison, they're all crooked, and you think, who's the real villain here? Is it the inmates or the staff? You can't treat people like that, and so you're hurling abuse at the screen, and that's what good movies do. It just makes you feel for the characters, and it draws you into the story. When I talk about good movies on my channel, regular viewers of my channel would have heard me say before that I like to be drawn into a movie. I know that's easier said than done, and the filmmaker has to find the right formula to be able to do that. And there's only really a small handful of movies where you can say, I loved it, I was drawn into the movie. That's the magic of cinema, the magic of storytelling. And this is one of those movies. It just seemed to fly by. And like I said at the beginning of the review, nothing really majorly happens. It's not full of set pieces or individual events. It's just a one long sweeping yarn. and brilliantly told, and you can see why people say it's as great as it is. Again, it's not my favourite of all time, but it's up there. And towards the end, it really comes together in its own, where you've got the discovery of Morgan Freeman's character is finding clues and items that were left there for him by the time he is freed. And then they meet up again, and it's fantastic. And I like the decision not to continue the story there or to give them a scene together. We just see a very wide angle shot of the beach and their meeting. And I think that's a good time to end the story. I think we don't need to see a hello or how did you get out and all of that stuff. Yeah, you just leave the film there, and it's up to us just to wish them well, almost. And it's almost like you've seen enough, you can now switch off the movie and leave them to it. And it's just one of those films that it's almost like a fairy tale, if you like. So, with that said, I think it's a 5-star movie. It's I couldn't give it any less, really, to be honest. It's just one of those that's just fantastic, and it draws you in. If you're looking for a film where you can really almost disappear into it, and then you wake up at the end, and you've almost seen it without a break. Maybe in another 5 to 10 years, when I've forgotten most of the story again, I'd love to watch it. So well worth catching this movie again if you haven't seen it for a while. So that's the end of my review. And just to leave you with a little bit about myself, I only give my absolute honest opinion, and I'm not bought by any of the studios with any promotional incentives or free tickets, and none of that from me. All of my reviews are completely genuine. Thanks again. It was great talking to you and reminiscing about this great movie. All the best. Take care.